welcome to Lynchian Picks on Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, a members-only collection venturing into the dreamlike world of David Lynch films and black, damn fine coffee. You are listening to episode 1 of 10 for Lynchian Picks, covering David Lynch's debut feature film from 1977, Eraserhead. Our black coffee pairing for this discussion is the Synthesis blend from Ceremony Coffee Roasters. Please take a seat, stay a while, and let's talk David Lynch over some black coffee. Oh my goodness, hello everyone. Welcome to the first official episode of Lynchian Picks. If you are just joining us right now, which I assume many of you are, please be advised that there is also an introductory episode to the series that came out right before this one. So if you have not listened to that, definitely go back there and listen to that at least at some point. But that will just kind of cover like who David Lynch is, a little bit of that background, and also what I hope to do with this series, and just sort of some, I don't know, little housekeeping things. But the gist of it is that this series is covering each of David Lynch's feature films, and this is beginner friendly. This is expert friendly. This is really for everyone to come to and just, I don't know, celebrate David Lynch's career, celebrate his crazy, wacky films, and to just sort of, I don't know, find a new perspective and discuss it a bit. So this is for everyone, and I highly encourage everybody that is listening to this series to follow along. I will be rewatching every single one of these films as I do this series, so I will have them fresh in my mind, and it would be really cool if you did too. I released a schedule on Instagram of generally when the episodes will be going out, and I will put it on Blue Sky as well. So yeah, follow along. If you're new to David Lynch films, if you're not new, this is for you. And I'm very excited to just kind of go on this journey with you all. So what now? Oh yeah, if you're here, thank you for subscribing to the Coffee House. This is a very new thing. This is the first official episode of like the Coffee House as a whole. This is just kind of like a venture into the void for me. I'm not really sure how this will turn out, but I appreciate all of you that are here listening to the episodes on here. I'm very excited for what's to come. I'm very nervous about the Coffee House and what it will be like putting out episodes on off weeks and everything. Who knows how it will turn out, but I'm very excited about it, and I think this kind of allows me to discuss more niche topics and to also like learn more myself, because Lynch I am very familiar with. I've not seen all of his films though, but I'm very familiar with him, so I'm very excited in future series to kind of put myself in uncomfortable spots where I'm in a genre or topic that I really don't know much about, so we can learn about it together. But I trust for Lynchian Picks, there will be plenty for us to learn together. Let's get into it. Let's do it. So our first segment is Now Brewing, and this is a segment reviewing coffee as black as midnight on a moonless night. All right, Now Brewing in this episode is the Synthesis blend from Ceremony Coffee Roasters. Now, I have tried this and am familiar with this brand through Big Bear Cafe. This is the brand of coffee that Big Bear Cafe uses. But Ceremony Coffee Roasters specifically seems to be from Annapolis, Maryland. And it looks like Ceremony has brick and mortar cafe locations all throughout Maryland, which is really cool. And I really need to make the trip out to see one. But they also have an online store where you can buy all of their coffees and even subscribe for cheaper prices on their coffees. And if you would like to check out their online store, I will put that in the show notes. But it's a really cool website. They have a lot on there. And they even have this section where you can purchase coffee by color. So they identify all of their coffees using a color, and each color is determined by characteristics of that coffee. And I think that's a really unique and cool way to market your coffee. It kind of reminds me of how like Swifties associate like a color with each of Taylor Swift's albums. I don't know. I think it's cool. I could get down with that. Sure. Why not? Why not? But it is also a good way for like I guess someone who's not as familiar with like I don't know how to describe tasting notes and everything. It's a kind of entry level way for them to get into coffee and to learn about tasting notes a bit. So it's really cool. I applaud Ceremony for that. And you know that with any coffee place I go to or try or whatever, I love to go to their website and read their mission statement. I love to see what they're all about. So this is what they said. Quote, "We've always believed coffee should be something special, and this simple thought moves us every day to source smarter, roast better, and delight more people again and again." End quote. Aww, that is so sweet. That's so sweet. I said this in the previous episode of Coffee Next Movie Picks broad show, Bring Her Back episode. You know, I think you would think like, yeah, duh, every coffee place wants to be special, wants to be unique. They want their coffee to be like distinctly theirs. But I would argue that's not true. I think that a lot of like even local places, local chains, whatever you might want to say, they are trying to replicate, you know, the massive, huge international coffee chains. And I'm not putting that down at all. I think that is perfectly valid because, you know, it's a hard business out there. So if that's what you want to do to make money, that's great. And that's also what people are attracted to. Like a lot of people, even when they go to a local coffee shop, they kind of want it to be like their experience at a huge corporate coffee shop. I don't know. They're expecting the same menu, the same flavors, the same vibe. So yeah, that is what a lot of places have to do to stay afloat financially. So for a coffee place to say that they want to be special and unique and want to put themselves out there and really deliver like a very niche and high quality coffee experience, I think that that is a noble cause. And I think that's worth applauding. You know, they're putting themselves out there. They really don't have to do that. So I applaud Ceremony for just stating that in their website. I think that's cool. Speaking a little bit about the synthesis blend, their website describes this as, quote, "balanced between sweet and smoky. Synthesis applies a darker roast profile to the sweetest coffees we source from Colombia and Guatemala. Dark but not too roasty, this seasonally updated single origin can be brewed as an intensely dark filter coffee or extracted with an espresso machine to produce a richly sweet, smooth shot." And they describe synthesis as a dark brown color. And they say this because, quote, "popular caramelized brown coffees are big on sweet dessert-like flavors like semi-sweet chocolate, cake, and candied nuts." Okay, so that's a lot of information they just put on us. I only ever had this when they say brewed as an intensely dark filter coffee. So yeah, I've had this as a filter coffee. I like a pour over. So I would agree with that. I think that it is a very dark tasting coffee, but I would also describe it as like a bright flavor. It is very punchy and citrusy, and it kind of does have like a sweet tone, but it isn't sweet like it's sweet like a sour candy sweet, not like a normal candy, if that makes sense. Um, and it says that it has notes of dried cherry, caramel, and it's a smooth drink. So yeah, I could definitely see the dried cherry. I would maybe even say like there's a citrus tone in there. Caramel, I could see that as well. I don't quite get the like smooth, like dessert sweet tone here, but I could maybe see where someone else would get that. Um, but I think that this synthesis blend is delicious. I really, really enjoy this drink. When I go to Big Bear Cafe, I actually just get this, really, and they give you free refills there, so you can go as many times as you want, which is really nice but dangerous. And it's so good. Every sip, you just don't get tired of this blend. Every sip feels very unique and kind of has that same impact every time. So I really enjoy this coffee. Um, it has a very rich and tasty, unique flavor. So if you're looking to try a black coffee that's a little bit more unique, I definitely recommend Synthesis Blend. So I am giving this the Nick pick. Okay, our next segment is the coffee thought, and this is an outlet dedicated to voice my many and coherent thoughts over coffee. As usual, no coffee with me right now, and I think it would be fun to like give you guys a second to just guess what I'm drinking because it's usually like one of a few things. It could be like a sparkling water. It could be regular water. Sometimes it is coffee. That's happened a few times. Sometimes it's a seltzer, like a hard seltzer. I think it's been wine a few times. So what do you think? I am recording this in the evening. It is almost 10 p.m. I just had a nice dinner with some chicken, broccoli, potatoes. It was very nice. Then I watched some Sex in the City, if that helps your guess. These are all clues. These are clues. I am drinking some red wine. I'm drinking a little glass of red wine right now. I do like, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. It's the coffee house. We're all members here. This is a private club. I can say what I want. Um, I do love having just a little drink to loosen me up loosen me up for these recordings. I can't do this drunk. I cannot record a podcast episode like I don't even think I could do it buzzed really. It has to be like I've had one glass, I'm on my second, or I'm on my first. Because I still need to sound intellectual, of course. I need to carry the conversation. That's my job. That's what I get paid for. Um, if you want to subscribe to the regular tier and pay me, that'd be great. But no pressure, no pressure. Anyways, speaking of that, let me get started. Let me get going. I've been thinking a lot lately about how I don't know much about anything. I don't know much about anything. I was talking to someone, I was texting a friend, not a close friend, not a close friend, but uh he was talking about his espresso machine and he was telling me all about like how coarse or how fine he likes to grind his coffee beans because how it affects the flavor of the coffee and everything. And then he likes to do like these special things to like create this drink. And he weighs the coffee on a scale and he has these special containers that keeps it like airtight and all that. And I'm going to be real. I don't do any of that, nor would I know why I should do those things. And I was like, dang, I don't do those things and I don't know why I should. And I'm the guy who has a coffee podcast. Isn't that crazy? Or, of course, there's like all of the film bros out there and the film gals and theys talking about movies. And I surely don't know everything about movies. And there are so many like just huge movies that I haven't seen, like any of the Godfather movies, Goodfellas, 2001: A Space Odyssey. There are so many of like those big movies. And then of course like just the production aspect, I know so little about. Actually, I know, I guess, more than the average person, I guess, just because of the people I've had in my circle. And I've done a little bit of research. But like a best boy, I don't know what a best boy does. I recently, like in the past few years, learned what a producer does. Because let's be honest, who really knows out there what a producer does? I mean, maybe some of us here at the coffee house do, but that's a kind of, I don't know, that's a tough nut to crack, I think. Um, all of these things, and I'm supposedly the movie reviewer, the movie guy. All of these things, and I don't want you all to be scared off and be like, "Oh, he is not actually qualified to speak about these things, is he?" I think I've said this on the show before. I think everyone's opinion, interpretation is valid when it comes to art. So I just trust that you guys trust my interpretations and opinions, and you get some sort of entertainment or interest out of them. But it got me thinking, like, how I don't really have the drive to become like the expert on so many different things. Um, and I'm okay with that. I am kind of at peace with not knowing everything there is to know or seeing everything there is to see. And I think that's okay. And I don't think it's crazy to just want to be satisfied with what you know now in the moment. There is so much to know, like, about movies. Think of it this way: there are so many movies out there. Even like I've had, like, the past few years, I've had my subscription. I've gone to the movie theaters a lot. I've made it a goal to try to see every movie that comes out in theaters. I've never done that. It is impossible to see every movie that comes out in theaters. Um, if you have like a full time job not related to movies, I guess. And then it's surely impossible to see every movie that's come out before that, too. You will never get to watch every movie. There will always be that one movie that people are talking about that you'll just never see. Like, maybe I'll just go my whole life without seeing Goodfellas. I'm okay with that. Maybe I don't want to know what makes the fellas so good. Am I right? Yeah. Yeah. It's okay. And I think that's what makes life exciting, and what motivates you in the present is that there are still things to be discovered in the future. I deeply enjoy movies. I get so much out of them, so much emotion, so much knowledge, I think, so much comfort, and so much like intellectual stimulation. Uh, so many things. And to conquer movies, what would I do? I would have to like give movies up in a way if I were to know everything about it. And that would be so sad. That would be really sad. So I think there is a point to not knowing everything. And I think that it is quite nice to be at peace with not knowing everything about movies or coffee or shoe shining or Jim Henson's The Muppets, whatever it may be. You know, yeah, yeah. And that's my coffee thought for today. I feel like that was a that was a pretty good one. That was a pretty good one. Moving right along to now showing. Now showing the Lynchian Picks, our film discussion segment diving deep into the dream-like nightmares of David Lynch. This is part 1 of 10, Eraserhead. In Eraserhead, Henry learns his ex-girlfriend is pregnant, and he is quickly left to take care of this baby, who, quote, they're not even sure is a baby, end quote. Eraserhead is written and directed by David Lynch and stars Jack Nance as Henry. It was originally released in theaters on September 28th, 1977. Let me take a sip. Let me take a sip. This movie, this movie is fucked up. This is a fucked up movie. Last week's movie, Bring Her Back, that was pretty fucked up too. That was pretty messed up. We are on a roll. And I think, was that the most recent movie I've seen before this? I don't know. I need to watch something happy after this. So maybe like Final Destination's Bloodlines, but also maybe I'm going to wait and watch Lilo and Stitch first. I'm so excited for Lilo and Stitch. Oh my God, let me talk about Eraserhead. The juxtaposition of the live action Lilo and Stitch and Eraserhead. Okay. Maybe they're more alike than you. Oh my gosh, Alien Baby, Alien Stitch. Ooh, that's a connection. Okay, that's a connection. A bit about Eraserhead. So this is, of course, David Lynch's debut feature-length film. He, I believe, had come out with some short films prior to this. Eraserhead took him about 5 years to make, and he made it with practically no budget, which is so cool. And I think I'm going to mention this now. I think it's really cool that this was made with very little budget and little means. And I think that this is going to come full circle with Inland Empire, which is his last film. I don't know what the budget exactly was for that movie, but it feels very low budget, and it feels like it is a movie that had very little means. So I think right away out of the gate of this series, I'm already making these kind of huge claims. I think it's really cool that this what who would become a legendary filmmaker started his film career with very little, and in a way ended it with very little too. And I think it just kind of shows that, it doesn't quite matter what you have, it matters what you make. And I think it's very inspiring. Like, oftentimes I think about like if I ever will make a film and it feels so impossible, but I look to David Lynch's films and I'm like, he kind of just made these films with very little. Like it's really beautiful that like this legendary filmmaker, this auteur, like I don't know, could do all of these things. It Okay, there we go. The collection's over, season's over. that's that's the point. Okay, so Eraserhead took him 5 years to make, practically no budget. And at this point, he had already had his first child, Jennifer Lynch, who is a filmmaker of her own, I believe, and she's also an author. Jennifer Lynch was a child when this was filmed, and she actually spent a lot of time on set. And she said in interviews that her memories on set were all very formative and positive, and she looks back on her time on set very fondly. There was even a scene filmed of Jennifer Lynch. I think it was said that she was digging little holes in the ground and putting like dimes in the holes. That scene was filmed, but it didn't end up making the cut for the film. Lynch never confirmed whether this film was about raising her, but I don't really think that matters. If this film was about Jennifer Lynch or not about her, I think it just matters what this film is. David Lynch describes Eraserhead as a dream of dark and troubling things. He also calls this his most spiritual film, and famously, when asked to elaborate, he says, no. And I was researching this film a little bit before writing the script, and I was just seeing like the truth behind Eraserhead or Eraserhead explained. And I was like, damn, they really don't get it, do they? They really don't get it. Like, David Lynch would hate to see a headline like that. I don't know the man. I never did. But from what I do know, I don't know. That just is like directly in conflict with how David Lynch wants his films to be interacted with. Did that make grammatical sense? I don't know. Getting into the film itself a little bit, one of the standout star elements of this film is the atmosphere. And I think that anyone who watches this film might have a very similar takeaway. but the atmosphere of this film is just outstanding. It is entrancing. It is deeply, deeply unsettling and disturbing. Um, and everything is arranged in a way that enhances it. The very opening of this film is just off putting and strange and very confusing and thought provoking. You know, we see like the mouth of Henry opening up, and this just like piece of flesh flies out of his mouth. And then there's this guy with this very like jagged skin, like working this machine. Just kind of a collection of images that don't really make sense and aren't supposed to make sense, but they're there. And then, like, the whole opening of this film is just kind of prolonged sequences of Henry walking through these different settings. And I don't think this is directly stated in the film, but this is supposed to be Philadelphia. This is David Lynch's depiction of Philadelphia. And a little bit of David Lynch history is that he moved to Philadelphia and describes it as like one of the darkest places he's been to, but he also describes it as like a source of much inspiration for his work. He describes like a lot of very graphic and unsettling things he witnessed while living there, and talks about how he sort of transfers those things into his works and draws like inspiration from it. So it's really cool to see Philadelphia depicted in David Lynch's first film in such a strange, bleak, and dystopian way. So right away, David Lynch in Eraserhead just sets up like a very rich setting, I think. And I think that this richness is also due to his use of sound, the sound design in this film. David Lynch is very passionate about sound design in a lot of his projects. He is the sound editor. And like many Lynch films, there is a constant white noise of sorts in the background. There's always sort of like the sound of wind or whirring present in the background. And in some scenes, there's even a constant mechanical noise, like a machine whirring, or like a kind of like a conveyor belt sort of noise. I don't know how to describe it, but it adds to kind of that industrialized dystopia feeling that you get. I don't know if that's a feeling, but you get it. Overall, though, the sound design, this constant noise in the background, and this mechanical machinery, the mechanical noises that you hear sometimes, it gives a sense of mystery and depth to this world. I think that it makes this world feel so vast and ultimately intimidating or overwhelming for these characters, kind of like they are a cog in the larger machine. So, dystopia. Yeah, yeah. Bringing the atmosphere to a much more confined setting, we have Henry's room, where much of this film takes place. Henry's apartment, his room, it's just a single room, but it feels so mysterious and like there's so much lurking around every four corners. Um, and that's just there's just like a lot of odd images placed in his room. There are mounds of dirt, there's strange objects, there is a lot of attention, very strange attention given to the window and the radiator earlier on, which we later see as like symbols or settings of their own, I guess. So and there's this weird cabinet that Henry like is putting something in. There, there's just a lot of weird things going on, a lot of weird things that happen in this room, and I don't know. It's really cool to see just these four walls, this super confined room, become a place of such mystery and horror, really. Another setting in this film is Mary's house. Mary is Henry's ex-girlfriend who has the baby. And rather than going through kind of like the atmosphere of this setting in particular, I just want to talk about the dinner scene, which is pretty much the only scene that happens at Mary's house. But just like a lot of weird things. And I think this is really the only part of the film where we get to see David Lynch's weird comedy come through. Like there's just a lot going on here. Like there are Mary's parents. There is Mary's grandma who is just sitting in the kitchen, and Mary's mom gives the grandma a salad to toss to get ready for the dinner, and the grandma's just completely immobilized, and the mom has to toss the salad for her, and then she like sticks a cigarette in her mouth. Just very odd stuff going on. There's like a dog, and I think there's like a litter of puppies. I'm pretty just I don't know, weird things. And then for dinner they're served these small little chickens squirming, and their little legs are kicking and everything, and they cut one open and all this ooze spills out. And then the mom just breaks into not tears, she like starts moaning and vibrating, and she gets up screaming and like runs out. And the dad says something so funny. What does he say? Oh, I don't know, but it's like I don't if you're not laughing, you're scared shitless, you know? It's such a strange, odd sequence of events that happens, and I wonder why. And I'll make my guess in a second here. All of this continues on into when kind of like the plot is set in motion. The mom pulls Henry into a separate room with Mary, I'm pretty sure, and she tells Henry that Mary is pregnant with his child, and she asks Henry, "Have you had sexual intercourse with my daughter?" Kind of like a weird uh, New England accent, and she keeps asking him, "Have you had sexual intercourse with my daughter?" And he's like, "No, no." Henry is so scared and he's so embarrassed and everything, and yeah, Mary must not be in the scene yet, because the mom starts like aggressively making out with Henry's neck. She's up on his neck, licking him and kissing him, and Henry's obviously very uncomfortable and not okay with this. And I think Mary comes over at this point. It's like, "Mom, what are you doing?" And I think we will come to see that a lot of things that happen in this film are sort of just not exactly what is happening in reality, of course, but it is what Henry feels in the moment. And that is what we're seeing is kind of like an exaggeration of the reality to describe how this character feels. So I think the mom kissing Henry's neck and licking him and everything is to sort of represent Henry's extreme discomfort in discussing his sexuality with the mom of his ex lover. Rather than that just being implied, it becomes literal in the scope of this movie. And that is the case for a lot of what happens in Eraserhead, I think. But I think that this whole Mary's house setting, this dinner scene, is sort of a critique of the average American family, kind of like the nuclear family in a way, I guess is the correct or accurate term, or just kind of like the white picket fence family. And the odd, uncomfortable amount of interest in like the child's sex life. It's sort of representing this dark undertone to this, I don't know, what would appear to be a normal family, except nothing in this film is normal, of course. But I think this is serving as a critique sort of way, especially with like the grandma sitting there helping with dinner, except she can't really help. And then they're eating rotisserie chickens, but they're these little tiny chickens. And the dad kind of making like those sitcom jokes, and the dog having all those puppies, except it's very like odd. It's like these, I don't know, 1950s classic all-American family tropes turned on their head a bit. That's something we'll see in a Lynch film again, I guarantee you. Um, let's wait for Blue Velvet. Let's wait for Blue Velvet. I also think this is, of course, a critique of fervent religious beliefs and conservative thoughts on sexuality, which kind of just, I don't know, channels right into like that all American critique as well. I also think that the house itself is kind of like a symbol. The house, if I remember correctly, looks like a very normal, like suburban house, except it's kind of like it's almost hidden by like tall factories and bridges and everything, and there's no clear walkway up to it. I think he has to walk through like alleyways and all that. And of course, he has to walk through all those factories and stuff. So it's almost like critiquing suburban America in a way of like this white picket fence is in the middle of this bleak industrial dystopia. Weird. Weird. I mentioned this earlier on, but a lot of what we are actually seeing in this film, the reality that is being presented to us, is what I believe to be just an exaggeration of Henry's mind. So the story is told through the perspective of Henry, I believe. And we see not exactly what he sees, but what he feels. So reality is not being presented to us. This is all sort of skewed and being affected by how Henry feels. And I think that this is seen through the sped up birth process. It's implied that the baby is completely grown and given birth to in a few days, which is crazy. That's not possible. And then the baby itself is this alien creature. It is not at all a baby. It looks so otherworldly, so not human. Um, it's wrong. And there's a scene where the baby gets sick, and 1 second the baby's doing fine, and I think Henry like turns his back and he turns back to the baby, and the baby is like has all these bumps on it, and its eyes go all white, and it's like moaning in pain. And of course, that's not very reasonable either. That's not very grounded in reality. And I think it could like be showing us how it feels like you can't turn your back on the baby for 1 second without it getting sick or something going wrong. And the sped up pregnancy process, that could be kind of like showing from the father's perspective how it kind of you feel very detached from it, and it flies by since you don't have the baby in your stomach. um, and the baby as an alien, that could be showing how the father, like I said, the father wasn't the one isn't the one growing the baby in his stomach. So it's possible that you could have a baby and feel like it is sort of this alien species. You feel very separated and detached from it. Later on in the film, the baby, who is constantly crying, starts laughing at Henry, almost like the baby is mocking him. And at this moment, Henry then sees himself as the baby, and he thinks that maybe he is sort of the one that is the alien. He is the strange one. He is not fitting into this world. And he sees himself as the alien, or he turns in, not the alien, the baby. He turns into the baby when he sees the girl from across the hall, who he is clearly attracted to. He sees her with another man. So he becomes self-conscious, and he thinks like, oh, I'm this, you know, estranged, weird guy. There are also visions that Henry has. They could be visions, they could be real. I don't know. Like I said, this is all just a theory. I don't know what's real in this movie. I don't. All of this could be the reality of this world. Who knows? But some of the visions, like the man in the planet who, like I said, is the man with that very jagged skin working that machine. There's a vision of Henry being decapitated, and a little kid finds the head and brings it to a factory to be made into erasers, which is obviously the title of the film, Eraserhead. I'll be honest, I don't know what those visions really mean. Um, they are kind of like the more obscure things of this film. I have kind of like feelings about them. Nothing I'm like confident enough to share on here, but I can just safely assume that they represent like how this character and possibly David Lynch feels. And a lot of this does, from what we know about David Lynch, a lot of this does feel like a stand in for him. I even think like the character of Henry has this very tall hairstyle. It's iconic, in the film. It's on the poster and everything. And it kind of reminds me of like an exaggerated version of David Lynch's hairstyle, because he kind of has a trademark hairstyle as well his whole life that is very like, it's kind of an up, not kind of, it is a very up hairstyle. So maybe that is sort of to symbolize like that this is just kind of like an exaggerated representation of like how David experienced as a father. But that might not be true. Who knows? Maybe this has nothing to do with David Lynch, except for him writing and directing it. No big deal. No big deal. So yeah, some of these visions are kind of out there. I don't really know what to make of them. But what do you think? What do you think? Like I said, I think that a lot of this film has to do with fatherhood and the darker feelings that come with fatherhood. I There is a lot of sperm imagery. There's a lot of sperm stuff. There's a lot of sperm stuff in this movie. There's a lot. There's a lot. For example, in the very beginning, when Henry opens his mouth and that long sort of appendage flies out of it, that kind of seems like very sperm like. So I think that kind of represents that this film is about fatherhood, and not necessarily like fatherhood in the experience of like raising a child into an adult and teaching the child lessons about life. I think this is more about like fatherhood in its earliest form, and like fatherhood with an infant, like with this infant baby that you know nothing about, and kind of about the strange feelings that come with it and the strange relationship that you have with that baby. Like I said, the character of Henry sees himself as that baby, because that baby is part him. He is that baby. Um, I think a lot of this has to do with the fear that comes with fatherhood. I think that the baby obviously does represent this fear. In the very end of the film, Henry does end up killing the baby, uh, and it's very strange how he does this. Like it could be it. I read it the first time I watched this film. I read it as curiosity, because he cut open with scissors, cut open the cloths that were wrapping the baby, and it opened up and it was revealed that the baby had no skin or like skeleton, really. It was just like guts underneath the cloth. And the Henry started just stabbing the guts and killed the baby. And I would think if the character's intention was to kill the baby, if the character was really set on killing the baby, I think he just would have done it through the cloths, really. So it's a weird reading. Um, I don't know. It's so dark. This is such a dark film. So yeah, I think that the baby represents fear, or sort of just these dark emotions. Um, and I think that on the flip side, the lady in the radiator, who I've not mentioned yet, represents comfort. The lady in the radiator sings to Henry. She sings a song that goes, "In heaven, everything is fine. You've got your good things, and I've got mine." And at one point, she is showered with kind of like those same weird fleshy appendages that look like sperms. She's showered with those, almost like they're flowers being thrown to her on stage. But she steps on them, and she's like trying to step on all of them, and this white liquid comes out, kind of like semen. Gosh, who would have thought we'd be talking about all of this on the show? Kind of like cum. I'll say the improper version because this is casual. This is the coffee house. We're all friends here. She steps on the little sperm appendages, and cum comes out of them. So kind of like she is like, I don't know. What is that? What does this fucking mean? We're gonna have a lot of these moments in this show, in the Lynchian show. You know, I kind of read it as like she was this beautiful lady being a war. She's I don't not beautiful. She has a very scary makeup on. This lady in the radiator, but I kind of read it as like she was the star up on stage. She has the blonde hair, which blonde hair is a very important Lynch symbol. And she's being awarded with these objects of male sexuality, but she is like stepping on them and conquering them, and kind of like she's conquering Henry's fears of his own sexuality, because we've seen he's very self-conscious about discussing sexuality and everything, and obviously like the product of his sexuality, this child, he is very fearful of and very I don't know, challenged by. So this lady in the radiator almost seems like a source of warmth for Henry, which would make sense because she is in a radiator. And she also is the one that Henry is with her when his head pops off and reveals him to be the baby, like the little baby head pops out. So she is kind of like a source of truth for Henry as well. That's just how I read it as. But the whole radiator stage, the theater, I guess, it feels almost like a precursor to the Red Room in Twin Peaks, where it is like this place of truth and revelation, but also this place of like darkness, and like you have to pass through the fire, you have to pass through these challenges in order to obtain that truth. So yeah, interesting stuff happening there. And I just want to go back to the lady's song, "In heaven, everything is fine. You've got your good things, and I've got mine." I think that this lyric is very interesting because it could be read two ways. I, of course, think that there is a very dark reading to this lyric. In heaven, everything is fine. I think her singing this to Henry in a way is affirming him, uh, that killing the baby will be a happy ending for him and the baby. And I think that the lady singing this to Henry is almost like Henry rationalizing doing this horrible, horrible thing and thinking like, oh, I'll just put the baby and myself out of this misery. Um, but I also think, and this is what I picked up on the second time, I think that there's a very hopeful reading to this. In heaven, everything is fine. You've got your good things, and I've got mine. It's pretty much saying that everything will be okay. And, in the end, when everyone is dead, things will be fine. And as it is now, I've got my good things, you've got yours. And yeah, not everything is great, but we've got those good things. So I think that there is also a hopeful reading. But you may be asking, how is there a hopeful reading to this song and thus this film when this father literally kills his own baby. Um, and this is what I stumbled upon after watching the film this previous time, the second time. I stumbled upon a very interesting reading of the film, and I saw it originally. Let's see. I saw it originally on this blog, Welcome to Twin Peaks. It says Henry's window. Oop, all these things popping up. Henry's window is the key to Eraserhead. This was written by David Johnson on November 25th, 2014. I will try to remember to link this to the show notes, but those are my accreditations. But I read through this, and this is where I got this from. But this guy's argument, this guy, I just said his name, David's argument was that Henry killing the baby is not, in fact, him killing the baby, killing a baby. It is him killing his fears of fatherhood and accepting a child into his life. And I think that that is a really interesting point, especially as we move forward in this series. I already know that with several of David Lynch's films, I am going to be making an argument for a more hopeful reading than people usually have, especially with films like Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet. No, not Blue Velvet, Inland Empire. I will be making a case for a more hopeful interpretation. Blue Velvet is more explicit with its hopeful interpretations. But I think it's really interesting that even in Eraserhead, this very bleak, dark, dystopian film, there is still a hopeful reading to be had. Did I really get this reading like my first time or even second time watching it? No, I did not. But reading through David's blog, I definitely see where he's coming from. And, I'm willing to adopt this reading. And maybe the third time I watch it, this will be a lot more clear. But I did say that the lady in the radiator was a source of comfort and warmth for Henry. And the very end of the film is Henry embracing that lady in the radiator, almost like he is accepting this warmth in his life. And yeah, it's a very dark thing because that came right after he killed the baby. But if the baby is purely a symbol for Henry's fears of fatherhood, maybe it's not as horribly dark as we think. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that this is a really dark movie. And I think, that man killed a baby. And that is something that I felt this time around. I was like, it is a baby. Like, that baby, it didn't choose to look like that. It looks like an AirPod. For if you didn't watch the movie, the baby looks like an AirPod. It's AirPod baby. Um, it's a baby. It's like the symbol of innocence. And so to see like so much, uh, to see the characters be so tormented by something that is so like innocent and pure, it's a really dark narrative and story. So like the hopeful reading, the hopeful interpretation, it does not come naturally to me with this movie. I just think that it is interesting that it is there, that people are having that. So yeah. Also, special shout out to the practical effects of this movie. Like I said, this had a very, very little budget, very little means of production. But the baby in this movie, I am so amazed with how lifelike this baby is. Like, it truly feels like a living thing. And also, a lot of the practical effects of the baby remind me so much of Alien. Like the face hugger in Alien being cut open and you see all of its guts and organs and everything. Reminds me so much of the scene where the baby gets cut open and you see the guts and organs of the baby. Um, all of these things sound so dark when I say them out loud. It just is such a dark movie. And a lot of the mechanical noises in this movie that you hear in the background, like machines whirring or wind, It reminds me a lot of Alien as well, and the atmospheric sounds that you hear on the Nostromo. So it's really interesting because this film came first. So I wonder if there was any inspiration taken from this film in building a very unsettling atmosphere. All right, that is about everything I have to say, I think. I think that this film I could talk about for quite a while, but I'm going to leave it there for now. And I'm going to give this film, Eraserhead, the Nick pick. Eraserhead is a film that feels like it's from a different, much darker dimension. The atmosphere is meticulously constructed from the very beginning, using sets that feel otherworldly, continuous background noise that adds depth, and strange symbols that evoke dark and confusing feelings. For me, however, the star of this show is the practical effects used to make Henry's baby feel like a lifelike thing. For a debut film and one with little to no budget, Eraserhead is a marvel and artistic feat. When all of these elements come together, they create a gripping, unique, and shocking story about the darker feelings that come with fatherhood. The film is not just an important piece of the horror film landscape, but human expression as a whole. I really love this movie, despite how disturbing it is. I really think that this movie is just endlessly original, and it is so unique. This is not something I will go back to often, but it is something I will turn to and think back on when I am needing inspiration, or I just want to think about creativity. I think that this film is just the well of creativity and originality. It is streaming on Max. If you have not seen it, that is where I watched it this time around. Hopefully, I will own this one on Criterion physical soon. But yeah, I really, really do like this movie. And although it is challenging and it is very dark, I encourage you to watch it if you have not watched it yet. Dear Coffee Nick is happening for the Lynchian Picks, but I've not gotten anything yet. So if you would like to send in your questions about David Lynch, your thoughts on his films, your reviews, I would love to include them in the respective episode for that film. But also, of course, send in any random thoughts or opinions that you have, and I would love to include them in the Coffee House or in the mainline show. You can send that through direct message on social media at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, or you can email it to my email address for the show, which is coffeenicksmoviepicks@gmail.com. If you would like to follow along with Lynchian Picks, the next episode of this collection will cover The Elephant Man and be released 2 weeks from today, or around today, Thursday, June 5th. Thank you for listening to Lynchian Picks on the Coffee House Patreon channel and for being a member of the Coffee House. Before you go, please consider becoming a regular of the Patreon Coffee House for only $3 a month, which will grant you bonus content on here and shoutouts on the main show. If you would like to stay up to date on the show, please follow at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and at Coffee Nick on Blue Sky. If you like what you heard, please follow the show, drop me a rating, and tell a friend about me. It really, really does help. A special thank you to Nathan Moore for creating the show's opening and closing themes. And thank you again for listening. Until next time, do I just cut them like regular chickens?